Katya, do you see the present? Okay. So let me start. It will be a really short introduction, but I hope that it will be understandable. So I returned from Kyiv, and I passed my PhD exam here, and in this book, which were proposed for us as material for presentation, thank you, they told us that every research and presentation of research needs to be started with some actuality points. So I prepared some actuality points. So in Kyiv, when I arrived here, I understand that the whole area of our metro station is destroyed by Russian attack, and it was destroyed during Sunday when we were on the bus to Uzhgorod from Kyiv. And it's the first actualization. And the second actualization is that full Kyiv is in traffic jams because of the protests which were started because of new law which somehow corrects like the independence of anti-corruption institutions. So it's some actualization, and I would say that we can't be passive anymore. That's why we are talking a lot about transformation, activity, and so on, because with Yulia and Alexander and Lydia, we were on Wallace Academy, and Alexander presented his project about theology of action, and one man from our group from Britain, he asked me like, why are you so obsessed with transformation, agency, and activity? Maybe it's like a destructive Marxist heritage. Why are you so obsessed with it? But I have nothing to respond to him. But I understand that the whole lesson which were proposed for us by Soviet Union was not to be active, was to be invisible in some sense. And that's why we are so obsessed with activity, agency, transformation, because someone is necessary for teach these things. So I also would like to dedicate my short speech to Andrei because of his special sensitivity towards ugliness inside Ukrainian institutions and church. So I will start with William Morris. I told about him a lot. It's present by Yulia, so you can read a lot after this presentation about him. He's not really famous, I think, because not many people here actually know him, but it's a really important figure for me because of many things. First of all, he imagine the situation. You're a pretty wealthy man from Great Britain in 19th century. You have a lot of interests. You are interested in architecture, medieval art, you're really obsessed with religion, and you started to dream to be maybe priest or architecture, and everything is going well. Your father even sponsored you at one of the best universities in your country, at Oxford. But sometimes you catch that people around you are not so happy as you have read in your medieval books. They are not pretty wealthy, they not have joy because of their work and job, and they seems like appendage to the machine. So what will you do? Many contemporaries of Morris, they just ignore this question and started their art path without I would say with sparse cynism, but not Morris. Morris wasn't this type of person, and to explain his sensitivity, I will bring you a small quote from his Utopia, which calls News from Nowhere, in which he describes 2003 year from his 19th century perception. And in this book, when the protagonist, we think that it's Morris, ask have you no prisons in the country now? The other man who explained him everything about the rules which they had in their new utopian life said, man alive, how can you ask such a question? haven't you seen the happy men that we have some across today? Do you think you would have seen them happy if they knew that their neighbors were shut up in prison? So it's a level of sensitivity which Morris personally had, and we need to understand it when we will talk about his project in the future. So, Morris couldn't sleep peacefully either, so he understands that the roots of transformation is the art, because art is like the most simple work, labor, which men actually do. So he understands that during times before industrialization, like people's labor was always connected with art, because nature of handwork means implementation of our agency inside this work. And that means that we like always have something like part of us inside this work. We're always in the path of self-realization, but not in the industrialization. When people like serve the machine, when there is a really famous essay by Heidegger which calls the question about machine, in which he describes how people started to be appendage to the machines, how system, natural system started to be only the part of the industrialization system. So it was a problem. So he personally started to analyze all the crafts around him, and he traveled a lot like through all Europe and trying to find some alive masters who had this ability like to create this in all tradition. Every craft, like embroidery, so pottery and so on. So he personally mastered almost all possible types of crafts and opened a business which is really unique. And it calls at first Morris Marshall Faulkner and Co. And then it was called Arts and Crafts. So in this business, he started to create beautiful things by hands, but not by himself, because he invited a lot of like orphans, people from the street, really poor people, like to emphasize his point that the art and the nature of art lays inside every human being, and it's independent like to the level of education or social hierarchical place. So yeah, he started this business, and it was really successful because it was kind of what he calls like crusading to the society. Like he started to make all the houses in Great Britain full of these craft things, and like he thinks that it will be a good point like to teach people that some time ago they had this joy because of their work. So now when they see these beautiful things, they can also feel this joy and remember how it was possible earlier. So it's really a shortly and brutal description. In this book you will be given a better one, but I'm really nervous about time. And I need to show you some pictures about things which this film produced. First of all, it's vitrages, stained glasses, yeah. You can see it, and there is a long story that like in Great Britain people stopped to do like natural stained glass. They trying just to paint over the glass, not to create something from parts of the glass, and Morris recreated this tradition again. And you can see it's also one of these. Also some furniture, yeah, and it's also like designed in every space, not just in front side. There's also a huge cabinet, which Rossetti, one of the Prerafaelites and close friends from Morris, he said that it's just an elephant, not a furniture. Yeah, some furniture also. And Lida, please, can you help me? Ковры? Carpets, yeah. I forgot all the words, sorry. Yeah, so something like this. And the most famous thing is Wallpapers. Like Alexander Semenovich always loved to remain this anecdote from Oscar Wilde, who was contemporary of Morris. And when he died, he said, "What an ugly Wallpapers." So yeah, Morris' thought was that to make beautiful Wallpapers all around the Great Britain will produce a good taste inside the people. Yeah, but it wasn't rapid change as Morris expected. So he said that the most organic step from arts and crafts, was to be a politician. So he opened the first socialistic party in Great Britain and started to give them money for politician work, to help poor people, and so on and so on. But there was some extra things inside. For example, Bernard Shaw, I think you know him. And in his essay, Morris as I Knew Him, he writes that Morris just sitting on the circle during the party process, and he was really angry. He always shouted idiots and just went out from auditory, because he said that they can't help poor people, they just talking about some smart, wise things, but it's nothing, it's meaningless. So yeah, he was really angry with this story. So he started to do next thing, which is also important. I would say that in his life, he has 10 professions. And the famous biographer Fiona McCartney, in his book, she started with words like, when Morris died, his doctor made a last diagnosis, which was just to be William Morris and to live 10 lives of ordinary people at the same moment. So yeah, he has a lot of things in his life, and one of the interesting projects is Society of Protection Ancient Buildings, which he made with his colleague Philip Webb, who is also architecture, because they noticed that many buildings inside Great Britain started to be restored. And what is the problem? Because it's a good thing, to restore some buildings, to protect them and so on. But Morris said that it's a problem because, let me introduce you a quote from the first part of his manifesto, SPAB Manifesto. We think that those last 50 years of knowledge and attention have done more for their destruction than all the foregoing centuries of revolution, violence, and contempt. So what it means? When we sacrifice some old buildings and saying they need to be protected, they need to be restored, we forgot about our own ability to create, about our own ability to create not just ordinary things, but really beautiful, really extra things, because it was in our history, and now we sacrifice it and just trying to protect them. So it's a problem that we just stop the time of art. We can be viewers, but not creators in this system of action. So yeah, it was the main point of film, to stop restoration, just to leave these buildings, live their normal life, and to be ruined, if it will be. So it's a normal thing. And Morris says that we need to create other things. And now SPAB Manifesto is also working, and they have special rules from Great Britain Parliament to control all the restoration and destruction of ancient buildings in Wales and in England. So yeah, it was a successful project. But let me continue with some more deeper questions about aesthetics and its influence on our life. Because here you see the one really famous poetry by Rilke. I would say that it brings a lot of fruitful thoughts inside Western philosophy, and we know, for example, that Peter Sloterdijk made a special book about this poetry. So we need the last words. When Rilke saw the apollators, he writes this poetry, and he finished with, "You must change your life. It's really important point because art is not just like one philosopher, Gadamer, he said that now we have like modern aesthetic consciousness, which means that we went into the museum, like I would say, make some photos, just post it on Instagram and forgot about the art like at all. But Gadamer said, when he describes his poetry, that art has special call inside. And when we ignore this call, we ignore the ability of being transformed. So every art has this call. And yeah, it's really important that we can see it not only in poetry, but in some like ethnic practices. For example, it's Japanese practice Hanami, which is really influential, like to see how sakura blossom, like just to see, to perceive this process, and to understand the deep nature, like of everything, of every phenomenon. Like, yeah, and through this process, you understand that beauty influences on your reason, on your mind, your understanding of things. Then we have, I will be really shortly, then we have, it's like practice in Sufism, when you hear some music and it brings you a special understanding of metaphysics, of transcendental things, of God itself. And it's also influence on your reason, but you can participate to this process through the art process, through the listening of music. And it's really important that in Orthodox tradition, even here in Ukraine, we also have this thing, like when you see the icon, it's not only about, again, like aesthetic consciousness, it's about transformation, about your participation into the God's vision. Lida will tell you about this more and more because she's a specialist, but I would say that they have special perspective. So all all main points are connected in the viewer, so you can be participated because you see and you move through the icon to the God. Yeah, and it's really important in Orthodox tradition because it's a part of religion culture. And yeah, the last point in this presentation, which is really quickly, it's Simone Weil, because in Volos Academy again, I had a really special conversation with Father Kirill Gavarun, because we started to think about Christological asymmetry, and we had a really big discuss, like, is only God or only human, how he can be human and God, and so on and so on. And then we understand that maybe all positions are heretical when we see that symmetry is the main aesthetic point in this thought. Like when we see that the symmetry is something right, then we always will have some heretical things. But when we transit to asymmetrical point as a main point, which is too aesthetical thing, we understand that it actually works like that he can be the God and the human in the one moment. So yeah, and after this discussion, I understood that aesthetic is not only something like material, only something like in museum or I don't know, in some practices, but it directly influences on our mind, on how we perceive some things. And it's really important because when we don't like something, maybe it's aesthetical thing inside our reason, and it's necessary to analyze it again and again. And the main figure in this process for me is Simone Weil, because she combined both of these attitudes. First of all, she wrote a big diary, Heavens and Grace, in which she describes like the aesthetical point as the main point of reason, because she describes how ugliness in like relationships, in institutes, in our surrounding can influence badly on our behavior and so on and so on. And then she has another really good point that when we see beauty, it calls us not like to be transformed by ourselves, like just by ourselves, but to transform reality too. When we see some beauty things, we need to act like in our real world, in our social world, and to do good things here, because it was the main dream of author, or I don't know if it's God or like a man, but it's the main thing inside, like to do some good things. Yeah, and it's really brutal description, by me, but I will stop on this point. And I think that the project which Katya will present us is really important because it connects all these things inside. So yeah, Katya, let me give you word and stop here.